Hello, and welcome to CultureCast. In this episode, we will be discussing the film Even the Rain. It is about a Spanish film crew coming to Cochabamba, Bolivia in 2000 to create a movie about Christopher Columbus's incursion of the New World. The director of the film, Sebastian, and their producer, Costa, begin their journey wanting to exhibit the tragedy and abuse of the native people 500 years ago by the Spanish, only to discover not much has changed in the world. While they are filming, they encounter a world of poverty, abuse of power, and the exploitation of the powerless. Bolivia has privatized their water, and companies own the rights to all water in Bolivia. Outraged, the people protest to fight for the right to water in a movement called the Water Wars. First, we're going to hear a little on the director and screenwriter of this interesting movie. Tara?
The film was written by screenwriter Paul Laverty, whose scripts deal with major human rights issues, independence movements, and acts of violence. Laverty directly addresses state-sanctioned crime, the brutality of war, the exploitation of the underclass, and harsh treatment of native populations. Laverty's work for Nicaraguan domestic rights organizations have provided him a vast amount of insight, and he has personally observed evidence of human rights abuses during the war between the elected Nicaraguan government. Laverty is known for carrying out detailed research before starting films, and he travels to areas of war and violence in order to gain better understanding of these conditions and realities. His tactics enable his films to become more inspired and express the realities that few films are able to articulate. His films show a pattern of dealing with the emotions and realities of human rights movements during times of conflict. The film was directed by Icíar Bollaín, wife of Paul Laverty, the screenwriter. This explains why the script so seamlessly translated onto screen. Their personal connection allowed a rare, special form of understanding between writer and director. Born in Madrid, she grew up in a liberal household in which each member was allowed to follow their own personal aspirations. This intensely liberal background explains her creativity and dynamic film style. Her films focus primarily on women who have come from broken backgrounds and have experienced domestic violence. Bollaín is interested in complex films with multiple levels. She deals with families, communities, and interactions between cultures. Her female perspective and emphasis on the women's life and point of view work together really well with Paul Laverty's focus on emotional struggles and rights movements. Their specific collaboration is what makes the film so successful.
Thanks, Tara. It is interesting to see the influences on the creation of the movie. We can see Laverty addressing human rights issues in Even the Rain as the audience gains a perspective on the issues in Bolivia of the privatization of water and its effect on the citizens through the use of parallel editing between the situation in Bolivia and movie depicting the actions of Christopher Columbus and the Spanish invasion. Even the Rain develops juxtaposition between the past of Christopher Columbus conquering the New World by exploiting the native people and in the present of the mistreatment of the Bolivian people.
An example of parallel editing is the juxtaposition between the rehearsal scene of the sermon and Daniel protesting in front of the water company building. In this sermon scene, an actor is rehearsing for his part as the monk Antonio Monterinos. It is set in a small church, and the monk's speech is on the abuse of the Indians and how is the sin and wrong. As the crowd questions him, the monk sticks to his beliefs, and when they tell him they have the right by law to use the Indian, he questions that, even in his law, is it just and morally right? Cut to the protest led by Daniel. The problem is privatization of water rights being sold to other countries by law. Daniel repeats the phrase by law over and over to emphasize the fact and present the problem to the audience on if it is justifiable, if it is law. In the use of parallel editing, we can learn the lessons from the past and reference the present. Through the use of the film on a historical event that has affected so many, we can see that life has not changed as much as we can imagine. While the goals and actions taken are slightly different, the results are the same. The powerless and poor can still be mistreated by the rich and powerful.
Thanks, Rebecca.
Maura, I understand that the characters went through some changes in the film. Can you explain how this happened and why?
Of course. The two main characters of the film are Sebastian, the film director, and Costa, the producer. Sebastian is mostly concerned with making a film that will achieve glory in his life, that will, quote, last forever, while Costa is initially only interested in making a profit. Although Sebastian initially seems kind and considerate to the native people, he is actually selfish in his desire to achieve glory in his life. This is shown in his efforts to prevent Costa from going to save the little girl because it would prevent them from finishing their movie. Unlike Sebastian, Costa undergoes a change throughout the film. When Teresa asks for his help at rescuing Belen, Costa is finally confronted with a situation in which his morals force him to act differently. He chooses to save the little girl Belen instead of going with the crew to finish the film. This is very different than the previous side of Costa's character that we have experienced. For example, he bribed Daniel to abstain from participating in any protests against the privatization of water in Bolivia. Daniel, a local actor in their film, was initially outraged by this bribe. He always reacts to injustice strongly, whether it be from Sebastian Costa or the Bolivian government. However, Daniel eventually conceded to take the bribe in order to further his cause and to help his people. What sets these characters apart is their moral system and what is motivating them throughout the film. Sebastian is motivated by glory, while Costa is initially motivated by money. His morals soon make him choose otherwise. Daniel has the strictest moral code amongst them, and everything he does is motivated by a desire to help his people and further a cause that will also help them. Alexa, can you tell us what the imagery and symbols mean in the film?
Surely. When watching the film, the overarching theme that is present is money equals power. In order to have anything in life, something always comes with a price tag. If you don't have the money to obtain things in society, there is no way of ever gaining enough power to obtain it. The social ladder is cut off to others with little room to allow others to rise in society. It is seen that the people who have power in society hold high expectations so that the lower class people cannot take advantage and surpass them. With the film and actual money, it's clear that the struggle to be heard and how the essentials in life should be free, such as water, are not obtainable because of the caps placed on the water wells. To see more into how power and money are everything in the movie, the directors use many motifs and symbols to justify the actions. Even the Rain uses much symbolism and motifs throughout their film to show the real struggle of how the native Bolivian people felt regarding their rights to the necessity that many do not think twice about in higher social classes: water. Water obviously was the main idea and had also given a lot of light to such a strong topic. Yaku, which also means water, is a symbol for hope and justice. Throughout both the film and the movie being shot, water was present in the people's lives. It was the water that carried Christopher Columbus over to the land to obtain his gold. It was the fear that water was used in a way to escape life and fear of being killed by the foreigners for escaping. It was water that gold was found in. Water played both good and bad in the film. In the real world, it played an even bigger role. People did not notice that water was life. It was what they had to survive and all they had to offer to their loved ones. The fight for water was the fight for gold way back when. With water being a main symbol, gold can also play a large role. Gold was a form of money to people back then, and water was the news source now. The different viewpoints seen through the actions of the producers were unjust towards the natives and the people they were representing because they did not study nor notice the faces of the people and the hardship that wrapped around them. Through the chants or the preaches, the people got their own power through the presence of one another. Religion was seen as an excuse for the cruel action of others. They felt that if they referenced God or said he said it was okay, then their actions were justified. Images that stick in one's head are ones that leave lasting impressions that make us think. One image seen in many different ways was the look on the natives' faces when the water was mentioned. For example, the cab driver's face at the end of the movie when Costa mentioned Yaku in the back seat, or the people when fighting for the water or having to deal with the water crisis each day it was brought up. That fear was the fear of losing something so valuable, their loved ones. They were scared of what would happen to them and the next generations to come. It was the constant fear of losing loved ones for the ignorance of others. The struggle for water now is equivalent to the struggle for gold back then.
Jenna. Even the Rain is overpowered by an ironic tone throughout the film. Irony can be seen in several situations throughout the movie, including setting, characters, and the plot itself. The setting of the movie is in Bolivia, but since Bolivia is completely landlocked and in the middle of South America, there is no way that Columbus could have gone anywhere near Bolivia. This makes the setting ironic, because you would expect the setting to be in a more historically correct setting, like the Caribbean islands, rather than in a South American country. The characters display some ironic qualities throughout the film as well. Anton, the heavy drinker, and the actor who seems to care the least about the native Bolivians, is seen at the conclusion of the movie as sympathetic towards the locals. He is seen giving beer to a Bolivian in the back of a truck that had just been beaten by police. It is ironic because he seemed the most unwilling to sympathize with the natives, but in the end, ignoring the commands of the police, he hands a captured native a drink. Sebastian, one of the most central characters, is seemingly the most sympathetic to the natives. He makes the decision that all of the actors will be seen in the beginning scenes of the movie, and seems to be the good guy. As the movie progresses, we see Sebastian's true colors.
He cannot seem to sympathize with the Native women when it comes to the safety of their babies. He was only concerned about getting the shot for the movie. In the end of the film, we see Sebastian completely ignore the pleadings of Bollaín's mother, and he insists on getting out of the city so they can continue the movie. It is ironic, because in the beginning of the movie, Sebastian was the most sympathetic towards the locals, but gradually we see that he is the bad guy. Costa, on the other hand, is the exact opposite. In the beginning of the film, he is unsympathetic towards the people and does not want to audition them all. We see a major turning point later on in the film when Daniel's wife pleads for the help for her daughter, Bollaín, who had been hurt in the riots. It is ironic because Costa does not seem to care about anything but the movie in the beginning, but in the end he realizes that he cares about the locals. This is the exact opposite from Sebastian, who we thought cared about the locals from the beginning, but ends up being the heartless one. Another ironic twist is seen in the film is the storyline of the movie they are creating opposed to the film as a whole. The movie crew is making a film about the conquest of Columbus and the injustice and slavery experienced by the Native people. It is ironic because the actors in their film are facing their own injustice in the real world. They are again dealing with the unjust privatization of water in Bolivia. They are dealing with the social injustice just like natives did when Columbus landed and enslaved them.
Thanks, Jenna. Now Kara is going to talk about the community.
We're going to get a good understanding of community by comparing the indigenous people of Hispaniola, present-day Dominican Republic and Haiti, with the people of Bolivia portrayed in the film. Let's start with Christopher Columbus. He mistreated people to fulfill his desire for power and prestige. Columbus was suspected of enslaving natives, and there were also several testimonies found accusing him of torture and mutilation as well. Let's look a little deeper into Sebastian. Despite Costa's change of heart at the end of the film, Sebastian stayed true to his selfish and inconsiderate roots. This is clearly portrayed in the scene where the mothers refuse to take their babies into the water. Sebastian insists that the water is only waist deep and basically mocks the mothers for worrying about their children's safety. His stubborn and hard-headed mentality reveals that he only truly cares about his film, just as Columbus only cared about achieving power and pleasing Ferdinand and Isabella. We can't forget about the Bolivian government. They made their citizens' lives a living hell through water privatization, which sparked a revolution. Sebastian asked the politician how such an impoverished society can possibly afford the sudden increase in water rates, to which in turn the politician inquires how much the production is paying its actors. When Sebastian informs him of the $2 rate, which he explains is because he is on a tight budget, the politician quickly snaps back, "Aren't we all?" This is when the audience truly realizes the parallel between the injustices the film crew has been committing and what their film is actually about. Generally speaking, the Hispaniolan community and the Bolivian community are not very different at all. The tyrants of each community clearly saw themselves as superior to the groups of people they were trying to conquer. Columbus didn't think twice when he stole the native people's land right from under their feet. This showed his lack of respect toward them and revealed his true colors. In Even the Rain, both the directors of the film and the Bolivian government also saw themselves as superior to the locals. Both clearly did not respect the Bolivian community's rights as human beings. With only the film in mind, the crew had high expectations of the actors and did not plan to pay them enough because they were disposable. In the beginning of Even the Rain, Costa instructs Sebastian to get rid of all the people waiting in line to audition for their film, which shows he really does not appreciate the fact that all of those people came out to help them. Costa sees them as disposable because there are so many of them and they are all impoverished. Going off of that, the politicians also look down upon the Bolivians because of their socioeconomic status. In the scene previously mentioned when Costa and Sebastian meet with the Bolivian government, the politician explains that it is hard to reason with the natives, especially when they're illiterate. It is clear that people of a higher social status tend to look down upon and take advantage of those in lower classes.
This concludes our podcast. Even the Rain was an extremely intriguing film, and we hope you enjoyed it. Thanks to Kara, Tara, Alexa, Maura, Jenna, and Rebecca.